Welcome to Out on the Limb with the Limb Junkies. Recovery, resilience, and the outdoors. We believe in the natural world as a therapy like no other, and we're here to prove it. Whether you're tethered in a hunting saddle, pitching lures into deep cover, or set up on a roosted gobbler, you're in the right place. This is a space for anyone who's found healing in the woods, foraging, fishing, hunting, and all of those wild things in between. We're building something here, and we want you with us. So let's gear up and get into it.
Hey everybody, what's up? Ian and I are going to talk a little bit about this upcoming season. The weather got really warm just the last couple of days, and it has us both thinking of turkey season. Both of us were driving around looking for gobblers in fields and seeing if the turkeys were out. And it lit a fire, and now we are ready to talk about it.
So do you want to start by talking about last season and kind of how that all played out, what we learned, kind of mistakes we made, and adjustments we plan to make?
I do. As a matter of fact, I want to hear from you some of your best moments from last season, your biggest mistakes or missed opportunities, and what did the birds teach you that you didn't expect? You know, I'm kind of looking for what worked and what didn't, what surprised you, and some honest reflection on last year. So you start, and then I'll talk about my season, which was a little bit shorter than yours. But why don't you take us through your season last year? Real quick debrief. Best moments.
All right, so we started the season out last year. Chad and his son came down. It was the first time they came down to Virginia for turkey season with us. Our season opens typically the second weekend in April. And up in Vermont, it's still winter, so them boys are looking to get the hell out of there and get some sunshine. So they came down here, and the very first morning, we started out at one of our best spots. A lot of birds, very flat terrain, but a lot of hardwoods and some field edge. And it was tough. We had one hen come in. We heard some gobblers, but nothing produced. Second day, we took them up to Shenandoah Valley. A buddy of mine's got a really, really nice property up in the valley. And that property specifically has been tough in the past because there's a lot of land to work with. And the National Forest borders it. Really, really steep terrain. And the birds typically roost up into the National Forest, and then they make their way down to my buddy's property. But out of a stroke of absolute luck, I can't tell you how happy I was with this, that there was two birds actually roosted on his property. We were able to set up on them and call one in for Chad's son. And that ended up being a great, great hunt, great morning. I mean, everything about it was perfect. Made for good footage too, because I didn't even carry a gun that opening weekend. I was more focused on trying to get these guys a bird and filming it. So that was good. And then from there, we kind of shift focus to the Wagner boys came down the following weekend, and we went out with them. We encountered some birds. I took them to a spot that we both have had struggles with. High bird count, usually flocked up almost the entire season, but on any given year, there's 4 to 5 longbeards in there. And Bill and his caliber of calling and his expertise, I figured that'd be a great place to take him and see what he can do. We ended up roosting those birds the night before, knew exactly where they were, got in close to them, and turkeys acted like turkeys. They could care less what we were doing. And, and I think that's a perfect example of you can be the most knowledgeable woodsman and be a perfect caller, and it still doesn't equal success all the time. Birds do what they're going to do. I think that's why turkey hunting is so addicting and so great, is that it's a chase that you do not have any sort of guarantee in your pocket. And I think that's what makes us keep coming back. But
do you like it? Do you like it more than deer season? Do you like turkey hunting more than deer hunting?
I don't think that's a simple question to answer.
Oh, I know. I'm putting you right on the spot too. But
what I will tell you is I get more obsessed about turkey season. I think a lot of it has to do with the season being much, much shorter. In my mind, we have 5 weeks. So I am just obsessed about getting as much in as I can. I think the stimuli of turkey season is completely different than of deer season. That doesn't discredit anything of the fall. I absolutely love being in the woods in the fall and hunting deer. But I think it just scratches a different itch. Turkey season does. I think it's very immersive. I think it's very communicative. I think that it's a more personal chase, I feel like. So to answer your question, I don't know that I enjoy it more or like it more. I just think that I obsess about it more than I do deer season.
That's fair. Interesting fact about Virginia. Probably the same everywhere, really. Most hunters have slowly declined their fall turkey hunter efforts over the years since the 90s through the 2000s. Fewer and fewer hunters are hunting in the fall for turkey. Most of them are saving their tags for spring gobbler. And I think you're right. I think when it comes to turkey hunting, it's the calling and the interaction and the game that really gets me fired up too.
Yeah.
The first gobble of the first hunt of that season is one of the best days of that season.
Oh, yeah.
So you had a couple of hunts, and Bill came out, and that took you about to the middle of the season. Take us through the end of the season. What else happened?
So the end of the season, we hunted, I should say I hunted really hard throughout the rest of the Virginia season, and the birds were just incredibly stubborn. I think what I've seen, at least my experience over the past 2 years, ever since we had that big cicada hatch, I feel like our flocks have grown tremendously.
I don't know if actual biologists with the State Department or the State Wildlife Department would agree with you. So, just for the sake of our listeners, Ian has a theory about the cicada hatch that we had just recently. One of the large broods here on the East Coast hatched, and he felt like it produced so much forage that the turkeys really had a good year, and that sort of propelled them to not only grow in numbers, but I think that's maybe unique to our county. I don't think I've gone through with a fine tooth comb the numbers from Virginia's harvest last year, but I know that fall was certainly down, and I believe that the spring harvest was on par with the year before.
Yeah. Again, this is a theory. I like to theorize a lot, but
Yeah, you do.
I know that the year that we had the big cicada hatch, and I think it was like 2 years ago. No, as of this spring, it would have been 3 years ago. A lot of guys were cutting open the stomachs of turkeys, and they were absolutely packed full of cicadas. So I think that it offered a lot of nutrient for the turkeys to feed on, but I also think it probably cut down on the predation of other critters because they also had stuff to feed on. So I don't know whether it's true or not. I don't know. But my experience over the last couple years has been that there's been a lot of hens. And so therefore the gobblers are not needing to search out as much. And I think my experience over the last 2 years has at least proven that they just aren't gobbling as much. They're just not wandering as much, and they're not responding to calling as much. So how that translated this past season was the middle of the season was just brutal. In my experience, the first week was good. They seemed very receptive to calling, and you could find birds walking around looking. And then it seemed like the middle 3 weeks were just henned up gobblers. And you had to be really smart about what you did and try to cut them off. And here where we hunt, we don't have an abundance of land. So we don't have a whole lot of space to move around and get in front of them and try to set up on them in different spaces. So yeah, the middle of the season was very tough.
You hunted a lot more than I did. As a matter of fact, I'd spent most of my spring beekeeping. Beekeeping in the spring and turkey hunting overlap from a seasonal perspective. So that's when a beekeeper is doing a lot of their work is the same time the turkey season opens.
Yeah.
So I was playing catch up with your hunts and listening to your stories post hunt. And I remember you really duking it out quite a bit. But I also know that you had some success. But what was your biggest mistake overall last season?
So to kind of circle back to the hunt with Bill, when those guys came down, we hunted that tough spot, and we did have 4 longbeards come in, and it was a very weird situation. You know, me and Bill talked in great length about it afterwards because I was just trying to understand the turkey's behavior, and I don't think he really had a great explanation for it either. But we had 4 longbeards come in within 60 yards, and it did not appear that they had, at least we didn't see any hens with them. There was a hen 30 yards to our left the entire time. These birds are 60 yards in front of us, and they would not budge. We were set up in a good spot, like everything seemed great, but they just wouldn't budge. So my mistake was I got impatient and took a shot that I shouldn't have taken and missed a bird at 65 yards. And hindsight's always 20/20. I did not know the distance, and it was just a mistake that cost us the hunt, because I think if we were patient, we could have maybe had a second chance at them, or maybe they eventually would have broke. But yeah, I think that was my biggest mistake. I don't remember bumping birds or doing anything absolutely bonehead. So I think that's the biggest mistake I can think of.
You know, if I had to look back through the seasons, I think that both of us had made that particular mistake more than once. That being taking a poke at a tom from just a little bit too far away.
Yeah.
And I have to ask myself if that's because we're generally pretty conservative because we hunt in such small acreage. We like the close in sure thing. So we're less inclined to take long shots. But also in places where we hunt, I think that we pressure those birds every year. So anytime we take a shot and we miss, in my mind, they remember that. They remember that pressure, they remember that location. And then over time, that kind of accumulates a taxonomy of knowledge with the turkey, knowing exactly where to be. I think that also has a lot to do by with in this particular place, they don't call in so easily
Yeah.
because we work the heck out of them every season. And we always get lucky and be able to usually pull one, sometimes two birds out of there. But those have been our turkey nemesis since we started turkey hunting.
Yeah.
This
No,
particular flock of birds.
I totally agree with you. I think that when you pressure birds or when you throw the same cards at them over and over again, they get wise to it. So it's another aspect of turkey hunting that is so attractive is you got to constantly find new ways to try to outsmart a bird with a pea-sized brain.
Well, that actually reminds me, you not only turkey hunted quite a bit, and you did duke it out mid-season, you also traveled for the turkey season this last season.
So I went up to Vermont. Before we get to the Vermont trip, mid-season, or the end of our season, I got married. I got married in the beginning of May.
Congratulations.
And it's funny too, because we were trying to have our wedding the end of March so it wouldn't interfere with turkey season. That was not possible. So we ended up on the 3rd of May. So I went turkey hunting on the morning of my wedding. And then I remember seeing you at our wedding and begging you to hunt. I was like, man, listen, I have been getting my butt whooped at all my spots. I said, is there any way we can go to one of your spots next weekend? I won't even carry a gun if you don't want me to. I just need to see a turkey act like a turkey. And it ended up being an absolutely stellar morning.
It always ends up that way, too. What you said a few minutes ago about finding new ways to hunt birds is unique because I think I remember discussing this with Chad, and he'll have an opportunity to talk about it when we get up there and talk about it this year. But he had mentioned on more than one occasion that hunting turkey with you up there was not like hunting with locals. You are very persistent, and most of the hunters there will work birds in their areas and things like that, but they won't really go out of their way to try to get 2 hours on the other side of the hill waiting for them to come down. So you actually, in my mind, had been adapting your hunt and your style of hunting from these small acreages that we were used to here to what they have available in Vermont. That giving you more space to work with,
Oh, yeah.
I think really increased your success and your ability to actually bring down some birds.
It does, yeah. And I think that that's exactly right. When we go up there and we have more space, my experience of turkey hunting down here is very limited. You can't move on them. Your tactical bag is very limited as to what you can do. So then when we go up there and it's, for the lack of better terms, a free-for-all as far as the space that you can move, yeah, I don't have a limit to what I can do. And as relentless as I am, I'm going to do what I need to do to put myself in a better position. So yeah, it's definitely a different style, and it enables me to kind of try different things.
That kind of leads me to wrapping up this first little segment, and that would be, what do you think that the birds taught you last season that you didn't expect?
You always hear a lot of turkey hunters talking about patience being the biggest tool in your bag when it comes to turkey hunting, and I think that is what I learned most this year is patience. When you have limited space and you can only do so much, sometimes it's best to just move on, or wait a couple hours. I'm a very antsy person. I don't sit still very well, but I've learned through my experience and through stuff that I've watched and stuff that I've listened to, that 10 o'clock bird is fired up and he's ready to come in and respond to some calls. And I think typically by 10 o'clock we pack it up and we're out. So I think that's something I might try to implement into this year, is just being more patient and dealing with the cards I'm dealt instead of trying to force something that's not there.
That's a good idea. I think I'll stick with you. So from a scouting and prep perspective for this season coming up, taking into consideration all the things that you learned last season, let's talk a little bit about the work that happens before we're even going to pull the trigger this year. So This is where serious hunters can lean in. This is where I want you to talk about the real process, not like the highlight reels from YouTube. So my approach to each season is to usually typically follow your lead. And last year, my son was able to come out for Youth Day. We had an excellent experience. But my scouting and setups and things like that is always typically following your lead, except where I happen to kind of go out on my own, and I've been successful on my own, but my prep is not the same as your prep. How do you approach preseason scouting? What are some of your preseason scouting goals for opening day for this year?
Well, the scouting aspect has a kind of a unique twist for us because of the nature of our properties. They're pretty small. We know where the birds typically roost. So it's not a situation where we're going to drive around these properties or step foot on these properties to try to locate birds. I like to go out the end of March, maybe a couple evenings, to try to hear birds on the limb, like to roost them. But it's more so out of like I'm getting impatient. I want to hear a bird gobble. It's not necessarily like I need to pinpoint them for season open. Like we've hunted these spots enough that we know typically where the birds roost, where they like to go once they get down, so on and so forth. But I do think it's important with scouting to kind of get an idea of where you're going to set up. So I do typically beginning to middle of March, I will go to a lot of these properties to do off-season deer prep. And when I do that, I have turkey season in mind. So I'll start scouting out better locations to set up. If we're going to try to set up close to where they're roosting, I try to like look at the lay of the land and figure out how I can learn from mistakes of past seasons by finding a better setup to be in better location or have better camouflage to where we won't get spotted, and try to approach it like that.
One thing that I think is unique is the fact that we don't really need to scout. I mean, we don't need to use maps typically unless you go to the national forest or some area that you hadn't hunted before. We don't really need to do boots on the ground in any of these spots. We know the strutting zones. We know the travel corridors. We know the roost trees. All we really need to do is decide how we want to set up on them in that season. And sometimes that even includes trying to get access to additional properties that get us closer to where the birds are, especially in some of these small areas where we've hunted them so often that they now have this 10-acre barrier between us and them, and we can't cross it and they won't come. So keeping all that in mind, how does your approach to filming on YouTube, like content angles and things like that, how does that change, and how is in preseason prep impacted as far as filming setup and filming?
I mean, it doesn't really affect it too much. It's obviously extra gear that you got to bring into the woods. So you have to be mentally prepared to carry the stuff and figure out how you're going to hide your setup. Again, this plays into me scouting out different setup locations when I go in for off-season deer prep, because I've got a tripod. I've got a tripod that I have a Levy suit cover that I put over the tripod on the camera that hides it pretty well. But it's additional gear. When you talk about setting up to try to hunt turkeys, you're trying to find a tree that's typically as wide as your shoulders that you sit with your back against to try to hide your silhouette. Well, when you got a tripod sticking out, a foot to your right, it makes your overall kind of footprint or silhouette bigger. So it's something I got to take into account, but I don't think it weighs a whole lot on the scouting aspect or going into a hunting situation having to worry, quote unquote, about the camera gear and what that's going to do. But one thing that you did mention is the limitations of our properties and stuff. Having the experience of hunting in Vermont and having more land at will has got my gears turning about trying to get more properties to hunt turkey. And so that is something that I've dedicated some time to this year, is scouting out some other properties that I plan to go door knock to try to make it not only capable for us to move on birds a little bit better, but also have a spot where at 10 o'clock, if my spot that I'm hunting is all but dead, I have a spot that I can pack up and go finish out the rest of the morning at, because that's something we haven't typically done. We sit till 10. If it's dead, we're done, and that's it for the day. Because getting into a lot of these spots mid-morning is tough, but having more properties and having more land to work with hopefully will enable some mid-morning hunts.
That does make a big difference. So good preseason activity to open up access to other properties.
Yep.
However, the dreaded door knock.
Yeah. I don't have any experience with it, I'm going to be honest.
I never like it when people roll up to the farm and knock on the door. I never like it. As a matter of fact, we recently posted a no trespassing signs at the entrance to the driveway just to stop certain people from
Yeah.
coming up there that weren't there for delivery. So me, I'm not a knocker. I feel much better looking up property information and trying to send letters and stuff like that. And as you know, I use honey,
Yeah.
jars of honey from beekeeping. This last season, I tried to open up access to properties for turkey hunting, and I sent out 4 letters to various different properties that I had driven past or scouted just from the road, and or people I knew, and I got shot down all 4 of them.
Yeah.
So every year I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 letters and get shot down. And this year I got shot down again, but I got a couple more in mind.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the benefit too of door knocking is you don't have to like sit back and waiting for some sort of response. And I know for me personally, if I did the letter thing, I would just be sitting around so anxious waiting to hear. Not that knocking on a door doesn't cause some sort of anxiety too, but I've done some research on how other guys do it and how they approach
How
it.
not to be creepy. So
Yeah.
you researched how not to be creepy and look like a weirdo?
And most of them say, like, yeah, you need to come up with a spiel. Like, you have to think about what you're going to say prior and be respectful. And that's my plan. And another key point, too, is a lot of these properties are bordering properties we already hunt. So I think a lot of my angle is going to be like, we won't even be accessing through your property. You won't even know we're there. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm very motivated to try to open up some more access for us this year.
I think we should save for a future episode a topic where we talk about not only our ethics, but standards and how we approach partnerships with those that give us permission.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's important that people understand. But let's kind of segue over into gear and loadout. I'm kind of excited because for my son, I got a new shotgun this year for his second season
Nice.
youth opener. Yeah. I got one of those Henry break action 410s. It's not easy to find those. Apparently everybody's running those little 410s now. I wanted something that would be a little bit lighter for him. But that's the only really gear that I've changed this year is just adding that to the pile. I'm still going to run my Super Black Eagle. I'll still have the 870 on standby just in case something goes down. I definitely plan to get behind that 410 a little bit. I've got those mouth calls that you got me from Wagner Calls last season, one of which had a cut that finally works well for me. So I finally feel like I can get in the fast lane and start really working on mouth calling. I rely on you for all of that. And when I'm alone, I usually just use the pot or my box call. I very rarely mouth call.
Yeah.
I've had the most success with one of those uncut training calls, just doing, putts and purrs. So what gear are you running this year and why? Are there any changes to your setup from last year?
I run a Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag 12 gauge, just a pump. It's a standard Walmart turkey gun. Nothing special about it. I'm a very frugal hunter. But this year I am putting a red dot on it. I decided that I would make the transfer, and not that I've had any issues with the open sights that I've run for a couple of years now, but I feel like the red dot, there's little room for error with a red dot. So I am going to be mounting a red dot. Camera gear's all the same. Calls are all the same. I typically start running my calls and practicing in January. So I've been doing that already. The mouth call thing is a constant practice thing. I can't tell you how much I practice on a mouth call, and it's tough. It's not easy. But having a guy like Bill who makes them and is excellent on a mouth call, I've got tips and tricks and a call maker at my disposal to help me out with anything I need. So that's been a great process to be able to learn from him.
One of the things I was hoping you would do is remind me how to take proper care of your mouth calls, especially when it comes to taking care of them off season in the wintertime. What's your protocol?
So what I've been taught is when you're done running your mouth call,
When you're done running your mouth? When you're done running your mouth.
yeah. First off, never keep them in a hot environment. First couple of years, I was running mouth calls. I'd have them in my truck, and I'd practice them on the way to work, and then they'd sit in the truck all day in the sun, and the heat just is not good for the latex. So you got to keep them out of the heat. But typically, I take a couple calls with me on the way to work. I run them in the truck. When I'm done, I bring them into work with me. I have a little mini fridge next to my toolbox, so they end up in the fridge. But I think the most important thing is to to rinse the calls. So after a day of running them on the way to work and then running them on the way home from work, I bring them right inside. I run water through the reeds. I pat them dry, and they go in the fridge. During the off season, I like to keep them in the freezer, but the coolness keeps the reeds from sticking to each other. And it's very important to run water through them and clean them out, because you run a mouth call and you've been drinking an energy drink or dipping or drinking coffee or whatever, that stuff is sticky and it gets in between the reeds and it ruins the call. Whereas if you take care of it, you can have a mouth call for years and years and years. And the more you use a mouth call, like the looser it gets, the better it runs. So it's a situation where I've learned the hard way. And again, I'm lucky to have Bill as a good friend, and so he's always helping me with more calls. But I've learned the hard way that if you don't take care of your calls, they go to shit.
You described some very specific impact to your calls, and I venture to guess that a vast majority of turkey hunters also have Zen pouch residue, coffee, and energy drinks.
And dip, yep.
And dip.
Yeah, I've luckily stopped dipping, but
I feel like that's quintessentially a turkey hunter right there.
a lot of turkey hunters dip, yep.
Your gear setup's the same. Other than adding a couple of new guns and things like that, we don't really change gear very often. We tend to hunt with the stuff that we have.
Yep. We do run TSS.
We do absolutely run TSS.
Bob's an absolute psycho, and he shoots 3.5s.
I shoot 3.5s, and I rarely miss. As a matter of fact, I never miss. Bob shoots hammers. That's the truth. But this year, things are changing. Obviously, branching out. You and I haven't spent as much time together turkey hunting because you've been hosting Bill and going up to Vermont. And it's up to me now to kind of get myself into the right rhythm and the right cadence, so that I don't have to wait around for you to plan turkey hunts, that I go do a little turkey hunt myself. So one of the things in my goal this year is to improve mouth calling, number one. And number two is to actually get motivated and go hunt. I tend to not want to pressure my properties as much. So I'll pull a bird out of there and be done for the whole season, or I'll just go with you once or twice. And if we get skunked, I won't go back. But this year, I'm thinking that there's a lot of other guys that are hunting in the perimeters of these properties, and they're probably not stopping. So I'm losing out not only on opportunities to gain experience, but also opportunities to bring down more birds. So I'm usually pretty conservative. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to harvest a bird every season for the last 5 or 6 seasons since we've been hunting together.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2. I'm not really expecting to harvest more than 2 birds this year. I've always thought, and I think we've talked about this, and maybe we'll discuss this in a future episode, that a 2-bird harvest for the year here in Virginia, when we're allowed 3, is probably doing pretty good. If you got 1 bird, You're doing great if you get 2 birds. But what are your expectations and goals for this next season?
Well, I was unable to shoot a bird in Virginia last year, but for me, it's not always about me pulling the trigger. Like I said, when Chad and his son came down opening weekend last year, I called that bird in for him. And I get just as much joy of being a part of the hunt as being the one that pulls the trigger, especially if I call the bird in. And I'm no great caller by any stretch of the imagination. But I do enjoy kind of having the reins of how the hunt goes and being the caller and being the guy that's trying to set up for other guys and calling in the birds for you the weekend after my wedding. That was great. I enjoyed the heck out of that hunt. And I was thinking about it too. I don't think I've shot a bird when me and you have hunted together.
No, not since the time that we hunted the corner property, the Golden Triangle, when Mike was there. And I had shot that tom that got crept in really close to us, and you had shot that other tom, which turned out to be a jake.
Yeah.
That was the last time I remember you and I shooting turkeys in the same
Yeah.
way.
But other than that, I don't think me and you hunting together, it's almost always been you shooting, and not out of design. It's not like, okay, you're shooting, I'm not shooting. It's just always kind of worked out that way.
I think it has something to do with the fact that I'm a better shot than you.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't want to bring that.
Or maybe
into
I
the
got
heart
my
of the
hands on the
conversation,
calls.
but
We could have a whole podcast about all the crazy hunts that we've had together. But my goals this year, I want to shoot a Virginia bird, but I just want to hunt, man. I just want to hunt as much as I can and hunt with guys. I think turkey hunting especially is more about camaraderie than deer hunting is. A lot of time is spent in the deer woods, up in a tree all by myself with a goal in mind. I think for me, turkey season has always kind of been about sharing it with other people. I'm really, really excited to get your boy a bird this year. We went out last youth season and set up your boy with the intent of him kind of having a dry run. You were unfortunately unable to get a shotgun for him to shoot before the season. So we went out with the intention of having the whole thing play out as if he was going to shoot. And it worked so perfect.
Could not have gone better. Holy cow. He, to this day, he regrets not letting me put a shell in there. Just for the listeners, I really only have 12 gauges. I really only shoot 12 gauges. And the ones that he's had experience with, like my Super Black Eagle, is a very big gun. And while he's shot it once, obviously it's way too big for him to be able to operate in any meaningful way. So I kind of tried to put him behind my single shot 12 gauge turkey gun. But that thing kicks, even with low brass, it kicks like a Ram truck.
Yeah.
And so I kind of set him up, and he said, I don't know if I want to do it or not. He says, this is going to kick like the other gun. And I said, well, yeah, it's going to kick, but you're going to be fine. And at the end of it, you're going to have your first turkey. Ultimately, we decided just to play it cool. And he went through just the whole process of shouldering it. And he was sitting in between my legs, and he had to pull the hammer back and put the bead right on that turkey. But you call that gobbler so close into the decoys, and he spent 15 minutes, it seems like, just standing all over it.
That was some of the best. That was some of the best footage I've ever captured.
Yeah, that's private land hunting for you.
We had that bird come into the decoy setup, and he did everything that you would ever want a bird to do at 10 yards. We even had this bird come in and flog the decoys and strut around and spit and drum at 10 yards. Never once had a clue we were there. And after about 15, 20 minutes, he moseys his way off when he realizes the hens are being stubborn. And they decided, okay, let's try to shoot him. So I try to call this bird back in, and he actually does come back. He doesn't come into the decoy setup. He skirts us at like 35 yards, but it was a great morning, man. Holy crap. But anyways, I'm really looking forward to a similar hunt this youth season, but having your boy pull the trigger and hopefully shoot his first bird. I'm really pumped about that.
I am too. I'll be excited for that. I think your kid's going to come along too.
Yeah, I hope he is. But yeah, as far as like the further outlook, Chad plans to come back down for opening weekend. So hopefully we can get him on a bird because his boy shot one last year. So I'm hoping to get him one this year. I know Bill and his son will probably come back down again. I don't know exactly when, but probably toward the beginning of the season. I do plan to probably go back up to Vermont. I would like to go visit Pennsylvania again because my experience in Pennsylvania last year was really, really good. I like the idea of traveling. I don't have this goal in mind of like knocking out states one by one and trying to do a super slam or anything crazy like that, but I like the idea of traveling around and seeing different woods and experiencing different territories and different setups. And so,
yeah, I totally agree. I'm not really necessarily that specific about harvest this next season. I would like to go to Vermont with you if you go this year. Success is not always about the harvest. One of the things that I noted over the last couple of years is that we're collecting a lot of spurs. So that's a lot of material, and we've got plaques, and you've done a good job of decorating with them. But I've accumulated so many, I have to ask myself what I'm really in it for. And I have to wonder how much material I need to keep from each gobbler every season. And I feel like that's just going to keep growing. It's weird. I'm kind of feeling like I'm not sure what to do with all the fans that we keep ending up with. I guess that's not a bad problem to have for a turkey hunter.
Well, I think my thing though is to me, it's not so much a bragging point or a trophy, for lack of better terms. It's more so like respect for the bird. Really believe in respecting the animals that we chase. And for me, displaying them is a way to show respect that they get to carry on and live on. And it's just something I feel passionately about. But like you, eventually I'm going to get to a point where I don't need 100 fans on the wall. I don't need lanyards for every single bird. So, and I think a lot of people do a bunch of different things. They'll save one feather and the spurs, or they'll make a big spur necklace and just have that hanging on the wall and they add to it every year. Or I know guys like Mike, eventually they just keep the spurs and the beard and they have a giant hook on their wall with 100 spurs and beards. But I think it's a momentum, it reminds you of the hunt, and it is an accomplishment that you want to display. But I think for me, more than anything, it's respect for the animal. So
Well, I think humans as a species have a prehistoric urge to celebrate things through totem.
Yeah.
And then things like totemizing things like beards and stuff like that, I think plays a role in that. So I'm hoping for a pretty straightforward season if the weather cooperates. Let's talk a little bit about early season birds versus pressured birds and how we're going to approach various shifts. And the reason I think that's important for the upcoming season is I think after the very first day and the very first hunt on that specific very first property, I think a clock starts ticking at that immediate point the first time you take a shot or you start calling for birds. And I think that immediately changes the pressure dynamics. So, what's your take on early season birds and when we need to start being concerned about pressured birds?
I don't think that it's a situation where if we hunt a property the first weekend of the season, you can't hunt that property again for the rest of the season. I don't think that's the case. I do think that pressure plays a big part, but you have to understand too, we're not hunting like public land birds where they're pressured daily. At the very least, every week on the weekends, they're being slammed by pressure. So we're very fortunate that we have private land birds that we hunt, and some of them are only pressured by us. So I think there's a certain level of discernment that needs to be taken as far as what am I doing to educate these birds. How I'm hunting them is going to impact the rest of the season, but I don't think it's a huge worry compared to a lot of different situations. Now, early season, at least from my experience the last 2 years, I feel like early season is great and late season is great. And everything in between is an absolute dogfight. Like, it is just very tough. And a lot of this has to do with the incubation period and hatch time, and all these things play into how the department also regulates season starts and ends. So I think for us, at least what I've seen the last 2 years, early season can be very good, and late season specifically has been very good the last couple of years. I can think of a lot of really great hunts the last week of the season. So it doesn't play into a lot of my planning. I'm a weekend warrior, just like you. We work Monday through Friday. Obviously, I take some time off work to hunt during turkey season, but it's not a considerable amount. So we're dealt with weekend hunting. And when you think about it like that, you got 6 weekends. That's it. 6 weekends to hunt turkeys. So there's not going to be a case where I don't hunt because I feel like I may pressure the birds. I'm going to hunt regardless. But it may be a situation where our top go-to spots have been overhunted or we've already harvested. So then I branch out and I may end up on public land or the national forest, or I may end up taking a trip during our season up north to try to hunt somewhere else. Even a case of like, hey, I got a buddy that's 3 counties away. I just want to hunt with him. I'll run the camera and leave the gun at home. I don't really care, but I just want to be in the woods and be a part of the game. That's it. So early season I think is great because the birds have not been tipped off. They haven't been pressured yet. And late season I think can be equally as great because I think the birds are fired up and they've already bred most of the hens and they're more receptive.
So they've had their first run.
Yep.
Is your calling philosophy, is your turkey calling philosophy changing as you enter into the opener through the rest of the season, aggressive versus subtle, or when to go silent? I know that in some of the YouTube content, watching you hunt with Bill, I know Bill is an exceptional caller, but he calls a lot, and he gets a great amount of success. And I wonder how that's affected your calling, and if your calling philosophy this year is going to be aggressive or if you're going to just play it by the birds and the birds' reactions.
So this is a great topic and a great piece to speak on. You talked earlier about wanting to get more comfortable hunting by yourself. And there's a lot of guys that call very, very little and have a lot of success. I think that if you're not an excellent caller or you just are call shy, I think that with good woodsmanship, good setup, and just a little bit of calling, you can be very, very successful. I also think that if you are very good at calling and confident and sounding like a turkey, there's also a level of no such thing as calling too much. I am neither one of those. I am not the guy that can sit back and do very, very little calling, but I'm also not the guy that's so confident in my calling ability that I'll light the woods on fire. So I try to kind of play it situation by situation. I try to take the temperature of the birds that I'm hunting that day. And if I need to be aggressive, I'm confident enough in my calling that I can be aggressive. But at the same time, if I'm encountering a bird that is not going to respond to calling, if I can, I will call very little and instead try to make moves and focus more on setup.
So that's how you would tackle or read a gobbler and adjust on the fly.
Yeah.
So if he's not responding, you'd get up and try to walk away to seem like it was hens were leaving.
Yeah,
to kind
there's
of
all kinds of tricks of the trade essentially that I've learned through watching videos and listening to guys that know more than me and listening to podcasts. And the whole drop back method works. The scratching in the leaves method works. The kill 'em with curiosity works. A lot of different things can work, but every bird is different. You know, what works for one bird is not going to work for the next. And
If you had to measure one setup or situation where we've both been the most consistently successful, would it be wood edge decoys, field birds, birds off roost in the woods, or a mix?
I think it's a mix, man. If you think about the hunts that we've had, just think about the hunts that me and you have had together.
Epic.
Okay, this throws out your solo hunts, my hunts with other guys, my solo hunts. We've kind of killed them a couple different ways. And I know me personally, I'm moving away from the whole decoy hunting method. I just, out of personal preference, I don't have anything against it. And obviously, there's times for it. You're hunting field birds, it's very advantageous. If we're going to be calling a bird in for your boy, yes, we're going to put decoys out to try to give him the best opportunity. But we've called birds into decoys before. We've called them over rises before. We've set up on field edges and just called them down without decoys. We've set up on them close to the roost and have them pitch right down and get a shot right as soon as their feet hit the ground. Like, again, I think it's a situation by situation basis. I think curiosity wins over persuasion more times. But again, our territories, the properties that we hunt, we don't necessarily have all the options at will. You know, a lot of the properties we hunt have no topography, so we can't kill them with curiosity by setting up just over a rise and having them peek up in gun range. Some of the properties we hunt are primarily fields. When you deal with field turkeys, a decoy obviously adds an element that piques their curiosity. So
That's where it's curiosity over persuasion. Hiding somewhere in the woods and cover, light calling to increase curiosity versus heavy calling and decoys to advance persuasion.
yeah, I think the curiosity game is far more fulfilling than the persuasion game. And I think that's where I'm getting to in my turkey hunting career, for lack of better terms, is I don't necessarily want to make the game harder, but I want to work for it more.
So basically, what you're saying is you want to just play hide and seek in the woods.
I mean,
hours of hide and seek in the woods.
I think, and it's funny because Mike, being my turkey hunter mentor, he's always been like that. He wants to shoot a bird that he can call in, and Mike doesn't have a problem using decoys too. But I think the idea of outsmarting a bird at its own game and piquing their curiosity and calling them is a far more enjoyable experience than setting up on a field edge with decoys and just waiting for them to decide to come in and check them out.
Yeah, for sure.
But times get tough sometimes, man. And if I got to decoy a bird in, I'm not above that. It's just, I think that the more that I get into turkey hunting and being not just a turkey killer, but actually qualifying myself as a turkey hunter, I think there's a level of respect and morality to the way that we hunt these birds. And my approach is changing. My thoughts on it are changing.
Well, that's the wild card. I mean, you just tossed a wild card into the discussion, because it's the superstitions, the rituals, and the things that probably don't make sense to anybody, but you do them anyway.
Oh, yeah.
This is where your personality comes through. And that kind of leads me to want to ask you about various different rituals and superstitions you have about turkey season. And I say that because the way that we both approach the woods and approach turkey season is one of reverence, and that our participation in this great game is on a higher level than just going out there to shoot an animal.
Yeah.
And when you take that into consideration, that kind of lends itself to developing rituals and superstitions and things.
Yeah.
Like one of the rituals could be as simple as I used to have this very good buddy of mine. His name was Bobby J, and we did a lot of grouse hunting together for a lot of years. And the ritual was is to pick him up in the morning, and we would stop at the corner store and get a donut. And he would always get the local paper, and he would always get long cut wintergreen grizzly.
Good
And then
stuff.
he would dip and read the paper while I would drive us up to the grouse hunting spot. That's a ritual.
Yeah.
Do you have any superstitions or rituals that you kind of lean into as the season opens and as you transition from season to season?
I don't know that I do. And it's weird because I am a superstitious guy. But as you're asking this question and formulating how you're going to ask it, I can't think of anything that I like really do that's out of superstition. I think a lot of it, like I'm a 5-hour energy guy. You can ask Bob. I'm a freaking caffeine addict.
His gut is a cesspool, and no bacteria can live in his stomach because he just does nothing but guzzle Red Bulls and 5-hour energy drinks. I think we could call your consumption of 5-hour energies rituals because I noticed that you do it the same time you get out of the car before you get for deer hunting or turkey hunting. Before you gear up, you chug 7 of those.
No, I'm a 5-hour.
You chug 7 of those things.
However, I guess if we talk about like rituals, I guess is a way to put it, or routine when it comes to turkey hunting, is I've started carrying a small like thermos of coffee. So I make sure that I get where I'm getting early. And you can ask Bob about this. I'm very, very adamant on getting to a spot early in turkey season. And I like to get where we're going to set up so that I have enough time to drink my coffee before it's time to really start getting serious and starting to do some tree helping or whatever. Like before the game is started, I like to sit at the base of that tree with my coffee and slowly watch the woods come alive.
Is that like a mental gear switch for you? Is sitting there and completing that? That's another ritual. Is sitting down and completing that coffee.
It is, but as I'm sitting here talking about it and thinking about it, I think that's my moment of breaking the obsession. That's my moment of I'm enjoying this moment for what it is. I'm sitting with my back against a tree in the woods, waiting for the songbirds to start doing their thing, waiting to hear the first distant gobble, waiting for the sun to start creeping up, and I'm just in that moment enjoying my coffee. I love that. And I mean, I do it in the deer woods now too. I always take a coffee cup up into the tree with me, but rituals, I don't know that I have any like superstitious rituals. I don't like kiss the shell before I put it in the gun or do anything like
I
that.
don't think it has to be egregious. But listen, just your approach to the coffee situation. If you think about working against the engine of your addiction and that you've, instead of just feeding your addiction that engine by being in the woods and preparing for the hunt and getting set up, you're actually taking time out of that for yourself to drink the coffee. And when you do that mentally, you're actually giving that part of your brain that spends all of its time obsessing and thinking and ruminating on the hunt plan time to rest. And when it has time to rest and recover, emotionally you have time to rest and recover.
Yeah.
So while that simple cup of coffee might seem like just a thing that you really like to do, it's actually really part of triggering your system to adapt and heal yourself while you're chilling there in the woods before your hunt starts.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought about, and I didn't really think about it as a ritual necessarily, but one of the things that kind of I liked last year especially was that you had us, these are, they were on field birds. So we were on a field edge, and typically those birds roost very near the field edge. Mm-hmm. In many cases, probably close enough so I can see into the field edge.
Yep.
And we have this habit of standing at the field edge before we sit down and set up right out in the open, almost like as if it's a challenge, before there's any real light, with headlamps off, just full body standing there, full suit, guns in hand, just standing there for 15 minutes, right out wide open. If any gobbler worth their salt on a limb that's looking out in that field would see 2 big silhouettes standing there as a challenge. And that quiet moment of trying to listen in that few minutes just before they start gobbling, right up until they gobble, kind of standing there as a challenge, is becoming one of my favorite little rituals.
Yeah. Well, we approached, like when we hunted the property you're speaking of, we hunted it last year and had success. We set up on those birds completely different. We had typically always hunted them a certain way at the same tree, the same strategy. And I remember we tried something different. It worked out great, by the way. But I hate being rushed to get set up in the woods. whether it's deer season or turkey season. So, and I have absolutely no problem getting out of bed if I'm going to go hunt. I'll hit snooze 6 times before I got to go to work, but I'm typically awake before my alarm even goes off if I'm going to go hunt. So I like getting there early. And there's a lot of anticipation and prep in my morning ritual to get to the spot, especially running camera gear. You got to make sure that everything is packed in a certain order. You got to make sure that you have everything that you need. And a lot of that carries into the night before, making sure batteries are charged and memory cards are good and all these things. So there's an extra level of planning and stress that goes into it in the morning. So getting there early allows me to check all those boxes in my head. So then once I'm settled, like you said, we have that time period of waiting for first gobble, or that time period where I can drink my coffee, that I'm relaxed. I don't have to worry or stress. And then first gobble happens, and that I go right back into war mode, and the coffee goes away. All right, it's time to be serious.
Any bold predictions for this season? Any bold predictions before we wind this episode down?
No, I think I'm really trying to approach this season with a lot of humility. Just grateful for the time, grateful for the people that we've met along the way. I do really, really want to unlock some more properties, but I don't really have some sort of hard set goal to meet. I just want to be out there and obviously try to harvest some birds, but I can't really think of anything that's set in stone goal-wise.
I'm just looking forward to getting out there again. Looking forward to spending time with you guys. Looking forward to getting my son out there. Really, it's just all about, it's that time of year again, you know?
Yep.
Instead of winter is coming, for us, it's spring is coming.
Yep.
So, game of gobbles.
I
Right?
can't wait.
You know, we're going to be back with a postseason breakdown, obviously. We would love it if you share your season stories and tag the show. Until then, keep your ear to the ground and your eye on the tree line. Check you guys later.
Thanks for going out on a limb with us. If this episode hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Find us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, and follow along for more. Until next time, keep your powder dry.